Right. Well, we're going to talk a new PCM Leadership Profile. I'm excited about this. We're excited at Next Element because this has been in the works for almost 2 years, and it represents the newest PCM product for leadership development. And we've already had some experience with it that I'm happy to share today, and excited to hear your questions so we can see how we can help support you in integrating this into your work. Here's what we're going to cover today. Talk a little bit about the genesis of this, the need, history, and development. Why did we do this? Why have we invested in making this? And then who's it for? And who did we build this for? And then we'll look at the actual layout and flow. Everyone received a John Doe of this profile in advance. We invited you to take a look at it. So I'm assuming that you've seen it and that maybe you have it with you, and that I'll be referring to different sections of this as we go through. We'll talk about uses and applications. We have some ideas about how to use it. You may also have some, and so we're looking forward to hearing what ideas you have. And then also upcoming improvements. I'm going to say up front, I think it looks incredibly bland and text heavy. That's not the intention, but we are going to be seeing some great improvements in the future. And then how does it integrate with my new book that's coming out in August? Because they're built to go together. Aaron, I'm curious if you've looked at questions yet. Feel free to chime in if there's anything here that we might need to cover that is not even in here. So a little bit about the need and the history and the development of this new profile. Definitely, we perceived a need to connect PCM with contemporary leadership themes and challenges. All of the work with PCM has been just in it feels like kind of in this insulated world of just PCMers working with people, but we really wanted to make it accessible and connect it with what people are talking about now in the world. And we also needed a full-featured profile and a seminar that offered a great alternative to the competition. There are so many great profiles out there that everybody's using, from DISC, Myers-Briggs, that have been honed just for these leadership applications, and we don't have one in the PCM world. Also, we felt like most of the standalone profiles were not very full-featured. They required a lot of additional input from the trainer or the coach in order to make sense out of it, so that it would be very difficult for someone to kind of guide themselves through it and get much from it. And so, yeah, we needed a profile that had a lot more guidance on what we call so what, now what, and didn't leave so much up to the interpreter to make sense of it for people. When I was looking at what was going on with the competition, a lot of them gave a lot more of that. So we have at Next Element, we spent a lot of years. This really has been our focus from the very beginning. We care a lot about PCM and leadership, and so we've been applying it for a long, long time. And we've also done a lot of writing, we've done a lot of blogging, and worked really hard to make PCM relevant for leadership. And we just felt like there was a gap in leadership-specific PCM profiles and seminars. The Key to Leadership, the Key to Leadership seminar we used to have back in the day, and that was decent. And one of the problems that we found with it was it gave people kind of a high-level overview, and at the end they felt like this is PCM. And so they either wanted more of that or they wanted to go on to the next thing. And so it kind of caused more problems than it solved, even though it was intended to be a nice leadership seminar. So this profile is step one in a two-step process. We were commissioned by Kaler Communications to develop a profile and then a seminar that goes with it. And that's going to be in the works here this fall. Today, we're just focusing on the profile. We want to get some feedback from using the profile before we develop the complementary seminar, so we know what are the most important things to focus on. And in our new kind of COVID world, if one were to design a seminar today, it might be designed very differently than how we used to design the ones, assuming that we were in person training the whole day. So the first step was we reached competition, and we got a lot of input and looked at what other models were doing, what other leadership profiles were out there, styles inventories, guides. And we also have been doing a lot of work looking at what are the trending leadership themes. And that's thing to not only look at what's current now, but try to read the tea leaves and see what is in the future. You know, if we could have looked ahead to right now, we might have, you know, who knows what we would have focused on. One of the things we're seeing now is leadership. It's really all about ability to connect with teams, and those connection skills, those communication skills, those abilities to motivate through all kinds of different mediums are just so critical now. We also incorporated many of the most successful topics from what we've published over the years. We're able to look at, you know, what got the most attention, what got the most comments, where were people really connecting, what concepts and ways of framing things were really resonating with people. And so we drew a lot on kind of our body of work over the past. I feel fortunate to have great relationships with all the CMTs. And so every single line and every single concept in this profile has been vetted and processed with all the CMTs, that's certifying master trainers. So Taby, myself, John Parr, and Jerome Lefebvre, we all worked on this. And Jerome and John and I spent quite a few hours going through this and making sure that we 100% agreed. There wasn't any confusion. We weren't introducing things that were not supported. And then Rob is such an incredibly valuable resource for just making sure that everything is consistent and that everything's backed up by the, you know, Taby's take on the theory. This profile got a lot of reviews, or a lot of people looked at it, and we wanted to get the initial drafts reviewed by both PCM and non-PCM leadership experts. So, because sometimes we get into our own worlds and we don't know, we think that things are important and understandable, and we don't know. And so we had some leaders out there that had never had any exposure to PCM, but they were schooled and steeped in leadership training and leadership theory, take a look at it. And some of those blind objective reviews were really, really helpful in us adapting and freshening up a lot of the ways we talk about things so it's accessible outside of the PCM kind of echo chamber. I'm going to skip this, but we have gotten some reviews already. Actually, I might mention this first one was kind of an interesting take on Valerie Gleason is the president and CEO of Newton Medical Center, and she's done some PCM training with us. But we sent her new profile, and here's what she said about it. She said, "is at once thorough and refreshing," which I thought was kind of an interesting perspective on it. From the personal executive summary to the leadership style and so on, you'll find yourself informed and intrigued by you. I thought it was really interesting that she found it's such an interesting exploration, and that learning about our personality structure is really about learning about the leader inside. And I didn't give her any priming on what this was going to be. And so I thought it was kind of neat that she felt like that was her experience of it. Jamie Furbush is someone we've worked with over the years in the Frankenmuth Chamber of Commerce, and she also saw this as really helpful and organized in a way that worked really well and was useful. And also, she saw both the self-awareness aspect, but also the benefits to helping her as a leader. So before we go on to kind of the purpose and target market, I'm curious if anybody has any questions or comments about kind of the need and the process of developing this and why we would even try to produce a new product like this. Any comments or questions? Or even if there's anything you resonate with, that'd be great too.
I think it is super exciting to have something new out here that's updated in the PCM world. So I'm more just celebrating with you.
Thank you. Okay. Well, the purpose and target market, we are always on the quest to establish PCM as legitimate, contemporary, and relevant. And here in America particularly, it is such a saturated market with leadership tools, leadership assessments, personality tools, communication tools, conflict tools. And so the quest is always, how do we get PCM noticed? How do we, when people are looking and they come across PCM, what is their first impression and how does it connect dots for them? Just before this, I was on about a 90-minute call with a company that provides coaching for massive restructurings in the largest corporations in the world. I mean, this is big time consulting, and they use DISC right now. And they were telling me all about how they use DISC and what they like it. And so for them, PCM really had to connect some critical dots for them in terms of really relevant big time leadership issues that they're dealing with. And how does it offer an alternative or an enhancement to what they're already doing? And I think those are connections that we need to be able to make really fast and get people on board quickly there. Also, we wanted to give PCM trainers and coaches around the world a leadership specific option instead of just making something else do. Most often now we just use Key to Me if we're going to do an individual profile for a leader, and then we make all the connections to leadership. But there's nothing inherent in the profile that does that for them. Probably two main target markets would be a leader that's struggling with self-awareness and self-management. PCM is such a phenomenal tool for helping people understand themselves and how they tick and then do something about it. But also any leader who's looking to go from good to great and look for better ways to connect, motivate, manage distress with different types. And so these leaders could be within organizations, they could be whole leadership development programs, it could just be individual leaders that are looking for a better tool. Comments or questions about the purpose and the target market for this? Anything maybe that you see that wasn't on there?
Nate, this is Steve Maley. I really see that I have a situation where I am dealing with a room of leaders that are reporting to a leader of leaders. And that's where I'm really hearing the need in my area of how does this PCM work here? Not just from the leader, but also the leader of leaders.
Right.
So
That's
I'm excited to see how this would play in that environment.
Yeah, and so leadership, there are some universal concepts and skills and challenges of leaders, whether you're leading leaders, whether you're leading up, leading down. And yet it sounds like, Steve, the group you're with is in a unique position within that hierarchy. Yeah. You know, as a distributor, we're keen on volume. Obviously, we would like to see PCM be the go-to leadership development tool for organizations of 5, 10, 15, 100,000 people. Not just one-offs, not just a few people signing up for a seminar, but really making this language and these concepts part of the DNA of leadership in companies. And that benefits all of us that are purveyors of this tool. Well, let's dive in then. I'm going to go kind of section by section through this and give you a kind of an orientation, a tour of the purpose and function of each one of these sections. And it's okay. I'll probably stop after each one. If you have questions or comments about particular things, this is a great place to bring that up. So the cover page is different than most of them. First of all, we really are focusing on people skills as kind of that prime differentiator of great leadership. It's all about people skills. And now within COVID, that's really being elevated, how important that is. And thanks to one of my mentors, John Simmering, he reviewed this and he said, Nate, you need a definition of leadership. You refer to leadership everywhere, but you don't define it. And so this working definition of leadership is consistent with my book and then also here. That puts leadership in the context of individual differences and how we leverage those towards common goals. We provide a high-level overview and try very quickly to establish credibility so people realize this is not just, this has been around and it's being used by a lot of people. And then what to expect. This is kind of setting the stage and did an engagement invitation for all six perceptions. So people read this and hopefully one or two of them will invite them to see that it's relevant for them and that there's reason for them to engage and move forward. This profile is the same as all the others and it only shows up one time in the whole home materials. My guess is in further versions, it will show up more times, maybe highlighting different parts of the model. The executive summary is something that has started finding its way into newer profiles, like there's a sales profile that has one. I like the concept of an executive summary, and it's very common among all the competition. And so we edited it to do a quick explanation of the condo, structure, bandwidth, base, and phase. So very quickly, they can take a look at that profile and get a quick sense of how to interpret it, what the numbers mean. And then we like showing character strengths right up front. And here is where we're really emphasizing types in you. That is such a massive differentiating concept of PCM, that it's about types in people, not types of people. And so you'll see that theme really emphasized throughout, because that helps reinforce that leadership starts in here. And it always is about what happens within us first before we try to go change or communicate with or influence other people. The executive summary then has these next 2 pages, and there's a few quick hits. This is intended to be a quick read. People can get a high level understanding of their structure and what it means. We've updated our definitions of currency and character strengths and motivators to be more consistent with leadership, so people can quickly see the connection to that. We replaced phase needs with phase motivators. It seemed like motivators is also a common way of talking about it in PCM, but it's more accessible outside of PCM than needs. Just today, when I was talking with that gentleman about DISC, he was all about motivators and drivers. Of course, we're not going to use drivers to talk about motivators. I do that periodically, and Rob is so gentle and kind. He's like, no, we're not going to use driver to talk about it. That has another purpose. And then we really lifted up that first degree. Instead of first degree distress as a standalone concept, we really wanted to talk about stress coping and negative attention. That's really, first and second degree doesn't mean anything to someone outside of PCM, and it means nothing until we explain what it means. And so we lifted up stress coping and negative attention as kind of those signature descriptors of first and second degree distress. And it's not technically 100% accurate every single time, but for an executive summary, we wanted something that people could grab onto and quickly relate to.
May I add something, Nate?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that when we talk about first degree, we talk about first degree of the base, and when we talk about second degree, we talk about second degree of the phase, because we want to show what's actually evident to people on a regular basis.
This particular profile has a different base from phase, and so the first degree distress will be different because it's coping from the base. Yeah. One of the things we've also found as we teach PCM is this idea of negative attention versus positive attention. People can relate. They remember their kids trying to get negative attention. And so it's just such an accessible concept, but behind the scenes, it's really one of the most profound parts of PCM is this idea of when we don't get our needs met positively, we attempt to get the very same needs met negatively with or without awareness. So that ends the executive summary. Profile, 2 pages. Comments or questions about that high-level overview before we go start breaking down the concepts?
No, I was just thinking how much I like having the whole overview right there. Even though you always have to say, well, wait, we'll get to that. You wouldn't have to say it quite as much. I mean, or the person reading it too, just that whether you get it all or not, just that it lays it out right away. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thanks. Okay, so now we go into the profile proper, and section by section here. Leadership style is right up front, and this is all the positives, and it looks at how our base personality type influences our leadership style. And here's where we bring in the style, like democratic for this person with the thinker base. We talk about, try to describe the essence of the channel and perception and what that is like in language that that a leader can understand. It doesn't rely on PCM speak. And so you'll notice here that preferred leadership communication style doesn't use the word requestive channel or any of that. It just talks about what's actually happening. We look at assets, and that would be, when we've done the demographics, we talk about what is the basic asset of a thinker. Their signature strength is synthesizing information. And so we put that in there and then connected it to leadership. And then there's also going to be challenges. And, oh, here we go. Challenges. So any floors under 20%, which we would normally call blind spots, we talk about being challenges. And for someone who has less than 20%, this is how they might experience me. And this is important because more and more, through the 360-degree concept, the idea of self-awareness and knowing how I come across is so critical for leaders. And so we wanted to build that in a lot more. Not just say, here's how I function, but consider how you come across. Consider how people different from you might experience you. Is so important for leaders to realize. Also, it's so typical, it seems so typical that we assume that everybody communicates like we do, or everybody values what we do, or everybody's motivated like we are. And so throughout this profile, you'll notice that we really try to kind of break that apart a lot. That's leadership style. And then we go into perception, and this is pretty typical to, pretty similar to what you've seen before, but we updated the definition with kind of freshened up versions that we found people can really connect with well, and connected it. How is this relevant? How is the concept of perception and currency relevant to leadership? And then we added something here, philosophy and mantra. This was kind of fun. This is new, is your philosophy might include this mantra. And we came up with a mantra for each of the 6 types. This was really fun to process with the CMTs because there isn't like a PCM mantra. That's not a concept, but it's accessible. And people talk about that a lot, so we included that. Of course, then we remind people that not everyone shares that, so be careful. Your mantra is not everybody's mantra. Yeah. Any comments about those 2 sections, leadership style and perception?
It's great to see the application. We've been doing it, but this puts it all together, and so it's going to be very helpful.
Good. Yeah, we didn't want to leave so much to be filled in by the coach or trainer. We wanted the coach or trainer to be able to pick up where that left off and say, okay, so now let's get to work, or let's get to setting goals. Let's start doing coaching.
Nate?
Yeah.
Will there always be a blind spot?
No, not everyone
Okay.
has them.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And blind spot defined in PCM is less than 20%. And,
Okay.
Yeah. So leadership character strengths, again, a freshened definition in connecting it to leadership. So how are your strengths relevant to leadership? And if we don't focus on strengths and strengths focus, PCM's been doing it for 40 years. And then there was this big strengths, positive psychology, strengths movement. Well, we've been doing it for all these times. So I think it's really important that we right up front say, this is a strengths-based model. Your strengths are here to serve you. Here's how they help you. And these are the signature strengths. Adaptability and energy and adaptability has been in some profiles for a while. And this one updates the definition and shows comfort and challenge zones for areas for each of the types, which ones. And I think, Rob, can you remember how we determined whether it's a comfort? Like, what was the numbers?
I honestly don't. I think it was over, it may have been just 50%.
So comforts and challenge areas there just helps leaders anticipate who they're going to have an easier time with and who they might struggle to communicate with. I'm really excited about this one, leadership motivation. And this we updated the definition of motivation, made it relevant to leadership again, and over and over and over focus on the number one goal every single day is to get your phase needs met in a healthy way. That's goal number one. And it kind of is the key to unlocking everything. Staying healthy, agility in your condo, staying out of distress, all of that stuff. And then we expanded the list of suggestions and made them really practical. And this was where we got great input from other leadership experts that were not involved in PCM. We're able to give some really good ideas here. We also scanned all the other profiles, sales profiles, all the other ones, and tried to pick the best from that list. And then over here was kind of fun. We added an at the end of the day, questions for reflection. And I imagined myself getting into bed at night and reflecting on my day. You know, any leader who is maybe trying to practice self-awareness, mindfulness, you know, maybe they're doing little things like journaling or whatever, but at the end of the day, and these are the questions to answer. If I can answer these positively, then I'm managing myself well. If I can't answer them positively, then it's going to be tough. Comments or questions about the leadership motivation section?
I would just make the observation that we've changed. There's been a definitional change in the motivational needs for thinkers and persisters. It's not just recognition of work, it's recognition of productive work for thinkers and recognition of meaningful work for persisters. And Tavia signed on to that.
I think it's purposeful.
Purposeful.
It might be purposeful and productive. Yeah, we really felt like we've struggled with that because there's no distinction between, and I know all of us as trainers, we work to distinguish those two with our clients, and now we put the word in to do that. In a way, we could say that for thinkers, it's recognition of work that is in the furtherance of time well spent. And for the persister, it's recognition of work in the furtherance of the things that are important to me, of the things I value. Notice also at the end of the day, we've really tried to keep a balance between self-focus and other focus, because every psychological need can be to benefit of others too. Like, have I helped other people become more capable? That's service, but it's also meets my psychological needs. It's not all just self-serving or selfish kind of stuff. Yeah. Leadership agility is a new concept. We've been talking about agility for a long time, communication agility, leadership agility. We really want to try to anchor that word agility within the PCM structure or in the PCM framework to be how we're able to energize different parts of our personality. And so this is a new concept that I think is really important now. Everybody's talking about resilience and agility and flexibility and adaptability. And so we talk about that, and then we caution against projecting motivators. I don't think that's anywhere else in any other seminars or profiles about the danger of practicing the golden rule. And then motivational blind spots, which is where we might have struggle motivating other people if we can't energize that part of us and recognize the importance of those needs. That's agility. Any comments or questions on that concept? All right. Decision-making style is brand new. This is something that we've noticed is so important. Is leaders, one of the unique things that leaders do more than the people beneath them is make decisions. And when you look at the number of decisions a leader makes every day and you go at different levels of an organization, it's insane. The number of decisions a CEO makes every day with limited information is incredible. And then as you go down, the number of decisions gets less and less and less. But how I make decisions is so important for leaders to be aware of, and as well as how other people make decisions. So we laid out decision-making style and how that's relevant, and how personality, our base and our phase influence how we make decisions. Because I think one of the most common discussions we'll have on our team is we'll all weigh in on something. I think we should, I think we don't, my gut says no, I'm not feeling good about it. And so then we're like, well, why? And sometimes we'll say, well, I don't know why, I just feel. Or, well, I can give you a logical reason or whatever. But I think leaders do need to be able to understand and articulate the basis for how they make decisions, and to be aware of that, and to recognize that there's other ways of making decisions. So that's what's here. So an example here would be my phase. My thinker phase influences me because I'm very keen on choosing the option that will increase productivity and efficiency. Naturally, I'm attracted to that option among the options when I'm making decisions, whereas a persister might be attracted to the option that helps further their values, or helps lift up a promise, or helps us increase our perceived integrity. Any comments or questions about that section? All right. Stress and distress. We're all familiar with this section. We've updated the definition again and made it relevant for leadership, and been a little bit more overt about this relationship between stress and distress. The whole stress, eustress, and some of the original theory that Taby referred to is kind of outdated. Some of the newer stress research talks more about how stress over time overwhelms our capability to cope. And that eustress is a thing. And so we talk a little bit about this, and then this is a whole new section here, which is the dynamics of distress. Some of this is borrowed from my first book, Leading Out of Drama. What can I even think of the name of that book? Beyond Drama. We talked about dynamics of distress, and no matter what your personality type is, distress has predictable dynamics. And so we looked at 4 of these that are really relevant for leadership. Self-justification is a critical one. Every personality type attempts to self-justify. They try to prove that their driver belief and their mask is true and accurate, and that they're right. Tunnel vision. We can't see the forest for the trees when we get into distress. And confusion about responsibility, that we either take on too little or too much. All of the myths are about confusion of responsibility for feelings. And then misuse of character strengths. This is really big outside of PCM world, is what happens when you misuse or abuse your strengths or overuse your strengths. And that's important concept for us to lift up as well. And PCM can really speak to that. So that's a new section. And again, a reminder that all of this is reversible by getting our phase needs met positively. Any comments about those dynamics or that section?
Nate, this is Rosemary. I have a comment, it's not specific to that section, but will some of these new concepts that you've incorporated, like the expanded definition of, productive work, meaningful work, and the distress things you just showed us, is there any chance those are going to be incorporated in the Key to Me profile moving forward?
I doubt it.
Okay.
Mostly because this profile is distinguished by those things, and partly just because of bandwidth and KCI. There's just so much stuff that they're tackling. I don't know, Rob, you might have a better sense for.
Yeah, I mean, I think at a minimum, there's going to be a long process involved, because it's going to take, getting master trainers together, communicating the changes, things like that. And I think really, if anything gets done, it's going to be just that one, the difference between the 2 types of recognition of work.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Those are already finding their way into things. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, good question.
And actually, one thing, I mean, once the book is out, it may take on a life of its own, because that distinction is very clearly made in the book.
Okay.
First degree distress. We did a lot of work on this with updating the definition, providing a lot more practical guidance on what's going on here, why is it important, where does it come from, like where in our structure should we be looking for this. And then we did a lot here on the driver and gave a ton of detailed, specific, observable behaviors so leaders can become more self-aware. And so this is all new. And some of these are very explicit, like not just over detailing, over explaining, but what does it actually look like? Like your sentences will get longer as you insert qualifiers and caveats, or you'll work hard to find the right words. And so therefore your speech becomes more strained, measured, and deliberate. And so these are very observable things. And our goal was that if I'm looking at this, I can say, oh crap, that was my last email, or I'm just doing it right now, and give people the ability to reflect, to detect that for themselves. And then also impact. So the very last one, it says your employees, and you can't see what's in there, but it actually says, here's how it's going to affect people around you. And then what we've never had before is how to get back on track. Because the purpose of self-awareness is self-management. And this then gives tips for a person to be able to say, okay, I recognize it, what do I need to do? And these are some guidelines that we've come from our coaching and from our training, some of those little phrases, turns of phrases and perspective changers and little mindset shifts that really seem to click with people. Like the idea of being a resource instead of being an expert is a phenomenal reframer for a thinker. So we have lists like this for all the types. That will probably be what comes in the seminar, is people will learn about all of these and be able to have all those resources for all 6 types and be able to learn how to implement them. Comments about first degree.
I just love that it's so clearly connected from self-awareness into self-management with clear steps. I love that that's just in the manual. I think that's going to make it so much more applicable for people who receive this.
Yeah, we do too. And we had to fight for the length of this. This is a lengthy profile. I think Cyril originally wanted it to be like 9 to 12 pages, and it's over 20. And it's a challenge, because do we just give something little and have it come alive in the hands of a trainer, or do we give them something that can stand alone, be meaty and useful, and then the coach and the trainer moves with you, kind of journeys with you from that point and fills in the gaps and lets the learner be in charge of the learning instead of being so dependent on the trainer to fill in the gaps.
I think this is just exciting for a trainer too, because it allows people to start practicing and then really work with them individually on what they might struggle with or where they might challenge, instead of having to start them out at the basics of just this understanding. So this is really exciting.
Yeah, I could see very often we'll ask someone, to go tell someone about your personality and profile and share with them your distress sequence and ask them for feedback on what do you do? Like, what specifically do I do that is this? Now they could take this list and say, well, you mark or circle all the ones you see every day, because it's there. So second degree distress, we've updated the definition again and emphasized negative attention, getting positive needs met negatively. And Taby was really clear about this, that there's no such thing as negative needs. There's negative satisfaction of needs, and there's positive satisfaction of needs. And so we were really clear about getting that in there, and that negative attention is the negative satisfaction of the unmet positive need. And so this is unique. I don't know that any other model is so clear about this kind of two sides of a coin and how predictable and connected those things are. And so here we laid that out, and we added a new concept, which is impact on work culture. And that's huge because culture is everything now, and leaders define the culture. Employees leave leaders, not companies. And so this impact on work culture can be a place where a leader can start getting some insight about, here's how my distress is affecting my culture. And again, how to get back on track. That was missing from other profiles, specifically what to do.
And that's one of the things that's so cool about this, is that instead of focusing on interactive skills for managing these first and second degree, it's all about self-awareness and self-management. It's fantastic.
And we're sneaky little devils, because we're sneaking in phase issues without talking about phase issues. And if you've read my book or whenever you do, you'll realize I love phase issues. I think they're very, very important, and they're very prevalent and pervasive in our lives. At least emotions are, and they're always there. And so what we tried to do is offer in this profile assurances and support and permissions for people to deal with their phase issue in a healthy way on a daily basis, because we don't know if someone is phasing or is a candidate for a phase change or has been in distress forever. But regardless, it's always good to deal with your phase issue in a healthy, authentic way. And so we kind of sneak in these little permissions along the way. Like here, remind yourself at the very last line, it's okay to feel sad when you lose time, opportunity, relationships. Contrary to what you think, here's the positive spin on it. And we include one of those for each personality type. I'm pretty sure most other profiles don't give that level of kind of psychological support. Any comments or questions about second degree? Oh, I might mention also, if any of you have heard my workshop on the irony of intent, or been through the advanced training since we added that, Taby and I, and then Rob's support, we have a second edition of this concept called the irony of intent, and it's what happens when we go into distress. And on the impact of work culture, the second bullet outlines the whole dynamic of what happens in distress. So the thinker sacrifices efficiency for control. And that is the deal with the devil that they make. It's the irony of intent when we start to get our needs met negatively. It's kind of like the irony of the whole thing is that thinkers prize efficiency, but when they start to choose control instead, they lose efficiency, the very thing they want the most. And so that sentence articulates the dynamics and what they give up, what they lose when they do that. And so we're really trying to throw a lot of meat in there to help people gain insight and give coaches and trainers a lot to work with. This is a brand new section, when strengths become liabilities. We worked long and hard to get the right way of saying this. And this is a pretty new concept. PCM doesn't explicitly teach what happens to your character strengths when you're in distress, because we talk about how you go into distress, you leave the condo, you start doing other things. But there really is a connection between how our strengths become liabilities. And so this lays that out for all three types. And we came up with wisdom. There's so much leadership wisdom out there. There's quotes, thousands of quotes. I have a book of leadership quotes. It has a couple thousand quotes in it, and I've been going through it, coding every one of them for which personality type, who's it talking to. And so there are these kind of words of wisdom that come from outside of PCM in the leadership world that I've plugged in there to help kind of articulate the dilemma. And so, organization breakthroughs just happen just on the other side of chaos. So this reassurance about to help people deal with that. Or like for responsibility, before you were a leader, your value depended on initiative and problem solving, but now it depends on your ability to empower others to do the work. So it's kind of these, so there's 3 for each personality type. Comments or questions about, or observations about this one?
So I think that last sentence under responsibility is gold, and I just would can't wait to see that sentence for all of the personality types.
Yeah.
So good.
So it ends with an action plan for leadership success, and all the profiles have action plans. This is a lot more specifically focused on leadership and a lot of suggestions that are specific to leaders. And I'm curious, Steve, to your point about leaders of leaders, there might be a subset of these that are particularly relevant, or some that we could add within a group setting.
I think you're right. I expect there are.
Yeah. And you know, those, if I, you know, I'm again thinking, I'm going back to this last one here, Steve, those little reassuring italic mantras there are really what we would say if we were coaching a leader.
Yeah.
Someone who's becoming a leader now is now, their character strength is not deployable in the same way that it was before. Now,
Right.
before Logic helped me organize my desk, and I was such a good doer, they promoted me to now being in charge of the doers. But now I have to apply Logic in a completely different way to be able to be a leader. So that's the action plan. And then we added a new section called Risk of Burnout. It's pretty generic, but burnout is huge now. And PCM speaks very clearly to how do we reduce our risk of burnout. And at this point in the profile, people can use what they've learned to apply these fairly generic suggestions. This one's pretty generic. I don't think it's specific to a personality type. And then we have an application guide. That's really common in the competition is of course, right now KCI does not formally allow a profile without a debrief. So we want to include it always. At the same time, we want these to be as useful in the hands of the leader as it possibly can be. And so the application guide is a way of doing that, and it sets it up so that we can use it for coaching, goal setting, homework, whatever we're doing. It kind of starts the process there for where we go from here. And, you know, today it was interesting. I'm not going to name names, but this highly experienced coach of coaches that was trying to decide whether to use PCM or DISC, I asked him, I said, so you've told me a lot about your personality. I get it. You're a high D, you're a high I, blah, 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 blah. I said, so how does your personality help or hurt you in your work? And it's like, he could hardly answer the question. But he could technically tell me all these things about his personality, but couldn't quite make the step on, so what does that actually mean in how I am and how I build my culture, which is, I think, where PCM can do such a good job. And that leads to the next step, and then we'll wrap it up here quick and have some more conversation. My next step is inviting, we're always trying to upsell, we're always trying to invite them to take the next step. And here is where it lays out some different things that people could do. And when you order this profile, your trainer code will trigger the profile to automatically insert your name and contact information in there, whatever we have in the system for you. So that way, when you order a profile for a client, it will take them right back to you for the next step. That wraps up the profile, and I have a little bit more about uses and application, how it integrates with the book. Before we go there, I'm curious, any other questions or comments about the profile itself?
Hey, this is Rosemary. I'm wondering, you said a couple times levels of leadership or becoming a leader. Is there a particular level of leadership, sort of top level, next level, or do you think this is applicable to anyone who supervises others? What would you say is the best target market within an organization for this?
I would say at least two. New and emerging leaders, I would focus much more on the self-awareness and self-management components of this. More seasoned leaders, I would focus additionally on the how to then deal with other people. But it in Goleman's 4 quadrants, you know, it's self-awareness and self-management, and then other awareness and other management. And I would say I wouldn't focus on those two unless a person is maybe a little bit more seasoned.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one more question before I unmute or mute. Are the concepts of psychological safety and diversity and inclusion incorporated explicitly? Obviously, PCM takes a lot of that into account implicitly, but how is that being handled?
It's sprinkled a little bit. It is all over in the book, though. In my
Okay.
book, it's a lot. It's a lot more in there.
Okay.
Yeah. It's so important.
Mhm.
Yeah. So some uses that we see is obviously a first level introduction to the Power PCM. This this can be the first profile that a leader sees, just like we may have used Key to Me before. But if in also a great sales tool for introducing PCM inside a company. I think people can see what's possible with this if we're wanting them to adopt PCM as a leadership development tool. Great framework for coaching. I would take this profile with a coaching client over any of the other ones right now because it's just so rich with coachable concepts and helps them really. I think debrief will take longer with this one than Key to Me. There's just lots more to do, but I would recommend that you give the profile to the client in advance and ask them to read the whole thing first and come with their questions so that the profile your debrief isn't spent a lot of time teaching them the concepts. It's really spent engaging with them around what they were curious about, what they want to understand more of. Let them kind of drive that process. And it's $115 just like the other ones. When the seminar is available, it will only be available in the corporate price of $155 for the seminar. There won't be an individual price for Key to Me seminar. Upcoming improvements, graphics, color, and design. It's boring. And we've seen some hints of what's coming. They're doing some really cool stuff in Europe, and coming in winter of 2020, this profile should look a lot sexier than it does now with all the same content. Some cool stuff they're doing with emojis and graphics and colors and stuff. Not emojis, maybe more icons. Yeah. So integrating with seeing people through. This is fully, thanks, Rob. The book and the profile were being written at the exact same time, so everything fully integrates, and they are meant to work together. The book invites people to take the profile throughout. The profile supports the concepts in the book and the other way around, and we have a free facilitators guide that is coming soon. We've seen it. It's under final edits right now, and it'll be available for free download from our website. And it takes people step by step through each chapter with group discussion. If you're a teacher of a course, it gives you questions and activities. If you're using it in coaching, it has a section just for coaching and personal development. It has ways to integrate and interpret your profile more fully. Uh-oh. You still there? Good. Can you see my screen still? Clients can order profiles directly from you because it's available to you as a US trainer, and they can also order them from our website. So if they go to our website and order them, they're obviously getting them from us. And so if you are having conversations or you're sending someone to our website to learn about it, just be sure to tell them, hey, if you do want to buy a profile, come through me. Cost us, you know. And the only way that people can get the profile on our website is it includes the debrief, and we're charging $250 for it. So you can tell them pricing could be different if you order with me. You know, maybe there's a group, maybe, you know, I give you a deal or whatever, but our goal is not to compete with you, and we encourage you to send them, order directly from you. We're out of time, and I want to be sure that we have a chance for other questions. You can visit seeingpeoplethrough.com if you want to and see how we're positioning the profile there, how we're promoting it, describing it, and you're free to borrow and pinch any of that and use it on your website if you want to.
So Nate, just a point of clarification, you're saying if they order on the website, the profile, it requires them to also have the debrief for 250.
That's the policy is we have to offer a debrief if we're going to with a profile. We can't just give them a profile. I think there's a little bit of leeway. We have to offer it. We can't force them to take it, but it is part of the package. We don't offer the profile as a standalone.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yeah. Our process when somebody buys a profile is Julie will immediately send them the code to take it and the instructions and say, and I'd like to work with you to schedule a debrief with one of our trainers. And then she sends, prior to the debrief, she will send the profile to the trainer and to the client prior to that call. Until we have been doing some group debriefs. The policy says that if you're doing 2 or more, you got to use a seminar instead of a profile. We don't have a seminar for this. And so I think there's a little bit of leeway in the interim that if you have maybe a couple people that want to debrief their profile together, that's okay to do that. It's not intended as a seminar because people are going to have different things in front of them. But we are in a gray area there, and we are working on a seminar.
And before the seminar, if you're just coaching a leader and want the profile in a coaching, not in a seminar context, will it be available at the $115 price, or once the seminar is available, will it always be $155?
$115 is the price for an individual profile. Yeah, $155 will be the price if you want to teach it as a seminar to a group of people where they get to see all 6 versions of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know we're at the top of the hour. For those of you that have somewhere you need to go, I totally understand. I'm flexible. I can stick around if you want to visit more about this. No problem. Or if you have, Rob often can answer questions I can't even about some of the technical stuff behind the scenes too. So, or policy and procedural things.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to using it, Nate. It looks great.
Great. And we welcome your feedback as you're using it. If there's things that you think could be improved or glitches that you find, we love to hear that. We can't just make updates all the time, but we certainly can collect those and work with Eric Eckberg here in the US. Probably over the next 3 or 4 months is the best time because it's really easy for us to make updates now. I'm guessing, Rob, once it goes on to PCM Hub, it's not gonna be so easy.
I'm sure.
Yeah. I'm curious, can any of you see situations where you would be using this?
Yeah, Nate, I feel like this is such a much better match for my Check Your Blind Spot program than the Key to Me in just so many ways. Like I said, it just makes the links for people instead of having to try to teach them and coach them through why getting their needs met is important and giving them those cautions right in the materials. I love it so much. Yeah, I feel like it's a much better match for leaders.